The world can feel heavy sometimes, like you're carrying a weight you weren't meant to bear. And for many in the LGBTQ plus community, that weight is made heavier by stigma, by discrimination, by the struggle to find acceptance and love in a world that doesn't always understand. Welcome back to Elder Roost, everyone. I'm Kevin Rivera. And today, we're tackling some tough but incredibly important topics: mental health, STDs, and the power of advocacy within the LGBTQ plus community. We've talked a lot on this show about finding love, about building connections, but sometimes the journey to these things isn't easy. It can be filled with obstacles that affect our mental well-being and make us question our self-worth. But here's the thing: you're not alone. And there are people fighting for you, working tirelessly to create a world where LGBTQ plus individuals can thrive, both mentally and physically. Today, we have an incredible guest joining us, RJ Aguirre. So, Jesse, before RJ joins us, I want to talk a little bit about why these topics are so critical for our community.
Honey, you're preaching to the choir. Mental health is something we all need to be talking about, but within the LGBTQ plus community, there are unique challenges that we can't ignore.
Absolutely. Like you said, Jesse, mental health is a universal concern. But when you add layers of discrimination, stigma, and even internalized homophobia that many LGBTQ plus people face, it can create a perfect storm.
It's like trying to build a house on shaky ground. You need a strong foundation of self-acceptance and support to truly thrive, and that's where advocacy comes in, right?
100%. People like RJ are out there building those foundations, brick by brick. They're fighting for access to mental health care, for education about STDs, and for a world where LGBTQ plus individuals can live authentically, without fear.
And let's be real, Kevin, talking about STDs can be uncomfortable, but it's so important. We need to break down the stigma and create an environment where people can get tested, get treatment, and protect themselves and their partners.
Welcome, RJ. How are you this evening? Good?
I'm good. I'm good.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you for joining us. So I want to just drop right into everything, but I did want to give a little preface as far as what you do, how you're a part of things, and what you do is make a difference in all of our lives. You've dedicated your life to helping others. You've worked with Ryan White. You've provided support to people living with HIV. And as a peer specialist for Miami-Dade County, you've been advocating for mental health and substance use awareness.
Yeah.
So we're very happy to have you.
Thank
You're a treasure of Miami. My first question for you is, can you tell us a little bit about your journey and what led you to become such a passionate devotee to the fight?
Okay. My journey stems from, I would say, maybe 25 years ago, where I was introduced to the gay community in Miami, although I was born and raised here. And together with that, I was not only introduced to the fun part of it, but I also was introduced to the sad part of it, that being a lot of friends that I made along the way. We lost to AIDS and some to a mix of not only AIDS, but also to substance use. Throughout my life, I I was worked in business administration. That was my thing. But I always knew that something was missing. and I just didn't know what it was. And then until my divorce in 2016 and a couple of trials and tribulations after that, I found that my voice, that I did have a strong voice, but it was just voiced in the wrong place. And that's where I started my journey. I started with a friend of mine that had actually talked to me about becoming a peer, which I don't know what that was. And when I went to the first training, I understood that a peer was somebody or living with mental health, substance use, or HIV, so on and so forth, because it could go in many realms. Or somebody who has lived experiences. So whether you've had family, friends, colleagues that have suffered from any of those things, you could use that to become a peer and then therefore help others. That led me to leave the private sector in business administration and go into the public sector with Ryan White. And when I went into Ryan White, I went a peer educator for newly diagnosed and especially minorities living with HIV and also living with substance use and mental health disorder. I was there for a while. I did that for a while, and then I transitioned into Miami-Dade County to a grant that served the minority community living with substance use, mental health, and HIV, or at risk of HIV. And along the way, I met a lot of wonderful organizations that are out there to give their services and help. The majority of them are free for those who are not able to pay or don't have the income or insurance or so on.
Right.
So
And
yeah,
these are funded through the county, through the state, or through the federal government? How are they privately?
so these are funded through SAMHSA.
Okay, SAMHSA.
Um,
Okay.
yeah, these are funded through SAMHSA, but also there is other funding. There's some state funding, there's some local funding. You will have an organization that has different fundings and it makes that organization. It doesn't mean that just because, hypothetically speaking, just because RJ organization, I'm only funded by SAMHSA. It could be SAMHSA. It could be
Right.
the state opioid response. It could be, there's different funding.
There's a lot of funding sources.
Yeah.
essentially.
And these entities, sign contracts and bid on grants, and then they're able to serve the community.
So what a jump from being a peer support to jumping over to doing all sorts of work with these organizations that are funding. It must be very stressful for you.
Okay, so any job is stressful, but
Certainly.
I think that of the outcome of the work, although there is stressors to any job, you do have that outcome where you are able to see that individual that came in with whatever concerns and whatever problems or whatnot, and be able to get a foundation to build on and go back into the community and be able to work and get their life back on the road. It's a very rewarding job.
Awesome. Also, I can see that, and I can see why you love it. You've worked with the Ryan White Foundation. Tell me a little bit about some of the challenges that you experienced seeing people who are living with HIV and what they face, particularly when it comes to mental health?
Anybody living with HIV, the first thing that you face is stigma, whether it's especially in the minority community, but whether it's a cultural stigma, whether it's the financial stigma, and then of course, with stigma comes many other mental health development.
Mhm.
So there's depression, there's anxiety, there's all of these things, and not knowing to cope with them, it could become a long-term effect on the individual's life.
Right.
So one of the things that I did notice was the stigma. Another thing was access to care. Everybody knows in Miami, it's very hard to get around without a car,
Yeah.
and a lot of these locations when I first started, although there was a lot of them, but there were a lot of them in particular areas, and then other areas were not as
Prevalent.
easy access. We have come a long way from that, but we still need to continue to push and get that accessibility
Okay.
to the individuals in need.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.